European countries have different approaches to the US President-elect Donald Trump, heralded risk relationship rifts in the bloc. Winner of Donald Trump's surprise in the US presidential election caused the rift in the heart of Europe more wide, forcing the continent's leaders to meet to discuss the relationship with the US president-elect. Before the election, most European leaders are opposed Mr. Trump, for fear the real estate tycoon could upset the security agreement with Western Europe, which has helped the region maintain stability throughout the past 70 years. But now, when Mr. Trump was elected, opposition voices that are faded when countries have to figure out how to respond, according to the Washington Post. British leaders seem eager to support him in the hope Trump can influence the course of his decision later. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister, declared expect to be working with Mr. Trump as long as he respects the Western European values of tolerance. Meanwhile, some European leaders argue that the continent needs to self-determination of his fate, should not rely on the policies of Mr. Trump. The differences in opinion may be indicated for the relationship between the US and its allies in Western Europe under Mr. Trump, chaotic, unpredictable, and unprecedented division. Europe has long had difficulty in finding consensus after years of economic turmoil, crisis, migrants, and those hostile to Russia. Islam. In June, the British had voted to leave the European Union, EU, and strongly challenges piling more. But the winner of Donald Trump, as to what he himself said, even 5 times proposed referendum on United Kingdom membership of the European Union. "We need to see this as an opportunity," said British Foreign Secretary while Boris Johnson to participate in meetings with European counterparts Tuesday 14/11. "Change is coming everywhere. When people request a change, the work of politicians is to respond," British Prime Minister Theresa May said on television, referring agents helped Donald Trump British victory and leave the EU. But other European leaders have different interpretations about the winner of Donald Trump. Many people find the way forward is not easy to choose. If Mr. Trump received a so easily, they risk fueling the wave of opposition forces in the country. But if the rejection of the US president-elect, they could lose the backing of the most powerful ally, might even get lost in tune with voters in the country, who are also worried about the issue of import migration, economic stagnation, and the downside of globalization. The biggest question is whether Europe will express full solidarity issues before it, or they will try to find ways to express it bilaterally, that is, each country will come to Washington to try to achieve the most beneficial deals with the new US president, said Pierre Vimont, former French diplomat, said. During the meeting of foreign ministers in Brussels on defense and 14/11, many have tried to avoid expressing opinions too strongly about Mr. Trump. French leaders say they will only resume their security plan without waiting for the new US administration. Europe should not wait for others to decide. "We have to protect our interests, i.e. the interests of Europe, and at the same time confirming its strategic position in the world," Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault said. France. Meanwhile, the leader of the National Front in France, who brought anti-immigrant ideology and skepticism in Europe, they said Trump's representatives at the weekend he was in touch with them to discuss the cooperate. On the threshold of the French presidential election next year, the percentage of voters support the party are growing. Other countries, it seems Mr. Trump anxiously awaiting signals easing economic sanctions against Russia. The government of US President Obama to promote EU 28 member states unite to enforce sanctions against Russia after it merged Crimea. However, many EU diplomats believe that Europe will soon unload at least part of the sanctions, if Mr. Trump easing of US sanctions before. But if that happens, it will be the slap in the face of the East European countries, the countries that worry about Russia, as well as Merkel, who promote European unity sanctions enforcement. Merkel was the European leader Mr. Trump challenged the most powerful. After billionaire wins, she and her allies clearly proved increasingly willing to defend his post-World War II order of the West, though the partners just turn away. Germany has long been investing much Dodge military fascist past due. But now the leaders are talking about the need to invest more than sufficient for national security, due to concerns dependence on the US. For us, one thing is clear that Europe needs to take more responsibility for their own work, German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen said. Some European leaders, it seems, ready to reject Mr. Trump. I think we will have wasted 2 years while he was on a tour around a Trump world that he absolutely does not understand it, Mr. Juncker said in Luxembourg last week.